Greetings to you all, gamers and strategists, and welcome back to our channel. When we answered the question of what is a 4X game, we identified a distinct subgenre popularly known as Space 4X. While 1993's Master of Orion might be considered to be the earliest and best known title in that category, there was another contender that actually predates it, and approaches Space 4X from a very different angle. In this episode, we're taking a look at the history of Stardock's iconic Galactic Civilizations series, from its humble origins as a game for IBM's OS/2 operating system written by a college student, through to its latest interstellar iteration, Galactic Civilizations 4 Supernova. Our story begins way back in the mists of time. The early 1990s to be precise, before the internet was really a thing and when computers looked like this, video games looked like this, and the hero of our tale was this guy. Meet Brad Wardell, computer nerd and video game fan, and at this point in time, still slogging his way through his college degree. Brad loved three things in those days: Usenet forums, IBM's new OS/2 operating system, and video games. Unlike his lazy contemporaries, Brad wasn't content with simply sitting around all day and talking about this stuff on message boards. No. He decided to actually make his own dream Space 4X and began coding it up in 1992. Armed with nothing more than a copy of Teach Yourself C in 21 days, and OS/2's early implementation of multi-threading and memory protection, Brad rustled up the very first version of Galactic Civilizations and incorporated Stardock systems to release the public beta in October 1993. The final release came the next year in 1994, just after Simtex's classic Master of Orion. Galactic Civilizations featured a sophisticated AI, and OS/2's robust multi-threading allowed the computer to plan its turn while the human played theirs, cutting down on waiting time and keeping the game moving quickly. Furthermore, while other PC games of that era typically supported a resolution of 320 by 200 pixels with 256 colours, Galactic Civilizations scaled up to a whopping 1024 by 768 pixels with 16.8 million colours, a huge leap in quality over the graphics supported by DOS and Windows at that time. An update named Shipyards was released shortly afterwards, allowing players to design their own customised starships to protect their empires and wage war on their enemies. Following this, in 1995, Stardock released Galactic Civilizations 2 for OS/2, largely the same game as the original, but sporting much better graphics and an overall improvement in its production values. From these images, you'd never guess the Yor were built with 1990s era technology. Sadly, despite some clear advantages over its rivals, just like the Neanderthals and Betamax, OS/2 lost the race for supremacy, and so Stardock began to respec over to the Windows platform. Stardock turned their hand to a new Galciv game on Windows in 2001, with a release scheduled in 2003. Coincidentally at the same time that Infogrames were due to unveil their long-awaited third iteration in the Master of Orion series. Stardock and Infogrames coordinated to stagger the release of the two games to avoid competing for the same audience, with Galactic Civilizations set to release afterwards and Infogrames including promotional materials and coupons for Galciv in the packaging of Master of Orion 3 in return. In what turned out to be an epic stroke of luck for Stardock, Master of Orion 3 released poorly. An early alpha version was leaked to an Australian video games magazine, who released it as a demo to the public filled with errors and features unintended for release in the final product. Sadly, it was just too different to the excellent Master of Orion 2 Battle at Antares, and was plagued with bugs. Many long-term fans of the series were disappointed, and some turned to the newly released Galactic Civilizations instead. This new Windows-based Galciv game lacked the spaceship design feature from Shipyards, but otherwise improved on the original in every other way, and was well received by reviewers and players alike. Galciv 1 is a complex game featuring details that are often missed in other Space 4X. While the humans are the only playable faction, the player can customise their playthrough by picking from a number of civilization abilities and a political party to support. The player's alignment starts out as neutral, but will change depending on their responses to a series of multi-choice events that periodically arise during gameplay. This alignment, whether good, neutral or evil, will influence how the other Galactic Civilizations will react to their actions in-game. Galactic Civilizations avoids the playable tactical combat of Space 4X titles following in the footsteps of Master of Orion, instead constraining warfare strictly to the strategic map. Probing enemy territory and fleet composition with scouts is essential to victory, and this allows a seamless integration between tactical maneuver and strategic play. Another standout feature was the detailed lore and background story presented in the game manual, where humanity's distribution of hyperdrive sparked a race for the stars amongst the major races of the known galaxy. Galactic Civilizations is an old game now, and graphically dated by today's standards. But the production values were high for 2003, and it's aged pretty well compared to other strategy games of that period. Galactic Civilizations was a commercial success, but due to the game's publisher filing for bankruptcy before most of the royalty checks were paid, Stardock had to fund their next GalCiv game from the revenue generated by their desktop software sales arm. Deciding to self-publish and opting to upgrade to a brand new, fully 3D game engine and nifty vector graphic UI designed to scale to any resolution, Galactic Civilizations 2 released to critical acclaim and was an improvement over GalCiv 1 in every way imaginable. The ship design feature from the original OS2 games returned, bigger and better looking than ever. The AI was improved even more, and many gameplay features increased the size of the sandbox available to the player. GalCiv 2's scaling UI technology ensures that even today, played at modern resolutions such as 1440 and 4K, display settings almost inconceivable as an option back during the game's development in 2005, the game still looks fantastic today. 2 expansions followed GalCiv 2's release. Dark Avatar added asteroid mining, espionage and sabotage mechanics, diplomatic treaties and new options for the AI, optional mega events that destabilize the power dynamic of the galaxy to shake up gameplay, a streamlined and better focused tech tree, planetary environments that could only be colonized by certain races until terraforming took place, and more. The second expansion, Twilight of the Arnor, was to be the last one, and Stardock crammed in as many new mechanics as they could without bloating out the game in unnecessary fashion. The most ambitious of which was civilization-specific tech trees, a huge feature that took many months of development time, but was, as far as we know, a first in PC strategy gaming. Other features included the star system destroying Terra stars, unique planetary improvements for each civilization, a new Ascension victory condition which allowed players to capture strategic points on the map and then guard them until a number of points had been reached, a big graphics overhaul, new invasion animations, and, well, you get the idea. Galactic Civilizations 2 has consistently sold well since release, and 4X Games specialist site Explorminate voted it as one of their top 10 best 4X games ever. No mean feat considering the stiff competition. After the release of GalCiv 2, Stardock reassigned most of the team over to work on their pioneering digital distribution platform Impulse, with new team members joining to work on Twilight of the Arnor and Elemental War of Magic. Eventually, Impulse was bought by GameStop, freeing up the team to work on Elemental Fallen Enchantress, while a new team, led by the newly hired John Schaefer, fresh from leading Firaxis' Civilization V's design, began to create a reimagined Galactic Civilizations. The team tried out many ideas during the years prior to GalCiv 3's release, such as single production queues, drastically different technology trees, new approaches to ideology, and more. This new title in the series released on May 14th, 2015. Most importantly perhaps, Galactic Civilizations 3 was built with a 64-bit engine and using DirectX 11, ensuring the game could be updated and improved upon for a long time after release, with consideration given to the inevitable advancement of technology in PC gaming hardware. Galactic Civilizations 3 was a major departure from the previous GalCiv games. It blasted open the Space 4X genre with its focus on more streamlined game mechanics and vast map sizes. The ship designer gave the player unprecedented control over a ship's appearance and animation, and community-designed efforts could be downloaded to play with too, with almost 10,000 different versions of the Starship Enterprise or the Battlestar Galactica Viper to choose from. 4 major gameplay expansions followed, each adding or refining mechanical elements and building on a roster of playable alien civilizations. The first expansion, Mercenaries, added the Galactic Bazaar, allowing players to hire unique mercenary vessels, each specialised for a different role, such as advanced scouts and terrifyingly strong warships. Following the Mercenaries expansion, Stardock's Brad Wardell returned after having co-founded Oxide Games and Mohawk Games, where he had served as their CEO and president respectively until they shipped their first games. Brad led development for the next expansion pack, Crusade. Crusade overhauled many areas of GalCiv 3's gameplay that players were unsatisfied with, bringing in a citizen system that allowed trainable characters to be added to provide economic bonuses, lead armies as generals, or spies to conduct espionage on rival civilizations. Governments were added into Galciv 3 in the third expansion, Intrigue, with each providing bonuses, abilities, and limitations to a playthrough, with major events called Crises further shaping the player's campaign through a series of tough choices and challenges. Finally, Retribution added some much needed polish to the game, adding constructible hypergates that allowed fast travel between distant locations in a civilization's empire, and artifacts, powerful items found on colonies with some seriously game-changing effects to unleash. Stardock eventually repackaged the original Galciv 3 to include both Crusade and Retribution alongside the base game, considering the changes each of these add-on packs implemented to be critical to the game's enjoyment. Galciv 3 is still a popular choice amongst Stardock's fanbase. Moving forwards in time, we enter the era of Galactic Civilizations 4, which provided Stardock with an opportune moment for a long-anticipated reunion of Galactic Civilizations 2 developers. When it comes to improving their games, Stardock have tapped into their most valuable and powerful resource: hardcore 4X fans. Led by Fall from Heaven designer Derek Paxton, Galactic Civilizations 4 was the result of years of research and deliberation into strategy gaming and 4X development, taking on feedback from players and game reviews to fine-tune the Galciv formula and produce a successor title that addressed many long-term complaints about the 4X genre, such as the notorious late game drag and excessive amounts of civic management or counters to push around on the game board. In Galactic Civilizations 4, habitable planets are now categorized into two types: colonies and core worlds. Players have full control over the management of core worlds, but colonies are considered minor planets that contribute their resources to the core worlds automatically. This strategic division enables players to administer expansive interstellar empires without getting bogged down in excessive colony management or needing to depend on AI governors. The game map now features sectors, which function to divide larger games into a series of smaller maps, ensuring that gameplay is varied, manageable and exciting no matter how big or small you like your 4X games to be. The first release of Galactic Civilizations 4 was the Epic Edition, released exclusively onto the Epic Games Store in 2022. And although the final product was a definite improvement over Galciv 3 and succeeded in Stardock's mission to address major fault lines in Space 4X as a whole, some elements of the gameplay weren't quite there yet. Specifically, the new adaptive AI system quickly figured out how to win by exploiting the game's new invasion system. It learned to divide its fleet into dozens of small forces to attack the player's colonies simultaneously. Very efficient, and ruthless in the execution of its mission, no doubt, but this came at the expense of not being particularly fun to play against for many players. Turns out that a smart AI isn't necessarily a fun AI. Addressing this issue was beyond a simple tweaking of game logic, and required a redesign of core mechanics. Succeeding Derek Paxton, Brad returned to take up the design role for Supernova. The result has been a top-to-bottom redesign of Galactic Civilizations 4. The invasion system was quickly redesigned, a new ship design system was created, TerraStars returned, and generative AI added, Alien GPT. Stardock's cutting-edge Alien GPT technology generates truly unique civilizations to play, including their own lore, diplomatic dialogue, starship choices, and ambassador images, and is likely the first commercial title to integrate GPT machine learning models in this way. With the art side of the AI generation trained on Stardock's own vast library of art assets, they were able to ensure that the results remained consistent. Alongside the sectors and core world colony split, Galciv 4 Supernova adds recruitable leaders that can be assigned into many different roles for great rewards, bonuses, and story events. A new resource called Control can be spent on executive orders for an economic boost or a quick fix to a dangerous situation, while a cultural progression tree allows players to steer the course of their empire's development into new and exciting waters. Governmental policies influence the behaviour of their citizens' functions, a new combat system with starship classes to grant the player greater agency in combat resolution, and so much more. And that, 4X fans, is a brief history of the Galactic Civilizations games. Each builds on the strengths of the previous titles while adding new civilizations, features and gameplay elements, while each retaining their own individual character and charm, and we invite you to check them all out. As always, thanks for watching, and happy gaming.